If you ever thought living in the American suburbs would be as peaceful as a painting, let me tell you this story. My name is Henry. I live next to a small lake where the water sparkles in the summer and freezes cold throughout the fall and winter. My house is located in a neighborhood managed by an HOA. It sounds orderly, but in reality, it's not that simple. From the moment I moved here, I understood that the lake, beautiful as it was not friendly for those who loved swimming. The water was bone-chillingly cold from October until well into April. Being someone who loved the water and loved swimming, after a long and dreary winter, I decided to create a small paradise for myself. An outdoor pool with a modern heating system, neatly placed right in my backyard. Of course, it was entirely on private property, with no involvement from the HOA. The pool was not just a place for swimming, but a sanctuary where I found peace at the end of each day. A bit of warm water amidst the cold weather. A bit of privacy amidst a community that could sometimes be a bit annoying and nosy. For 2 years I enjoyed my pool without a single complaint. No one interfered, no one raised any issues, simply because I followed all the rules. No noise, no disturbance, no violation of any regulations. Everything was peaceful until one day. A day when I had no idea that my peace was about to be disturbed by the people I least expected. That day the weather was strangely beautiful. The sky was crystal clear, the sun warm but not harsh. A perfect day to enjoy the backyard pool. I had prepared everything: a comfortable lounge chair, my favorite book, and a cool drink placed beside me. The sound of trickling water blended with the chirping of birds. Truly my own little slice of paradise. I had just been soaking and relaxing for a while when my stomach started growling. Reluctantly leaving the warm water, I wrapped a towel around myself and went inside with the simple intention of quickly taking care of business and then returning. But life, it always has its own way of ruining even the simplest plans. Just as I stepped inside, the phone on the kitchen counter rang. It was my brother. And as always, the 5-minute conversation quickly turned into a nearly half-hour chat session. I laughed, I talked, I lost track of time, until a sudden feeling of unease passed through me. I rushed out to the backyard, my heart pounding in my chest, and the scene before me left me frozen in shock. On my beloved lounge chair, the very spot where I had been resting half an hour ago, was a complete stranger. Draped in an oddly casual air, she sat there as if my backyard were her personal resort. My hat, the one I loved, was lying on the ground, covered in dust. The bottle of sunscreen had been tossed carelessly near the edge of the pool by a little boy, presumably her son. But that wasn't the worst part. While I was still standing there in disbelief, the kid had already jumped into the pool, splashing and screaming with delight, right in the middle of my private space. No permission asked, no greeting, not a moment's hesitation. They had taken over my space as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that moment, I understood. The real nightmare had just begun. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible, even though inside, my blood was boiling. "I'm sorry, but this is private property," I said, my voice not raised but clear enough for her to understand that this was no joke. "I'm going to have to ask you and your son to leave this area immediately." The woman, Karen, now I could confirm she was a true HOA type, turned to look at me with a fake look of shock, her mouth hanging open as if I had just asked for something completely unreasonable. "What?" she exclaimed. "This is a community pool. I saw in the HOA letter that the recreational area is open to all residents." I squinted. A recreational area? My pool? In the backyard, separated by a fence and locked gate? "You're mistaken," I replied, as patiently as I could. "This pool is private property, entirely within my land. It's not part of the HOA, not public property." But she wasn't fazed. Karen waved her hand toward the lake, her voice rising in frustration. "But the lake is freezing. My son needs somewhere to swim. What kind of mother would let her child shiver in that cold water? As if that absurdity wasn't enough, when I stood my ground, asking the child to get out of the pool, she immediately turned red in the face, her eyes blazing. "Are you threatening a child?" she shouted, standing up quickly, nearly knocking her umbrella out of her hand. "If you take one more step, I'll call the police and report that you're threatening my son." I froze for a second. Not only had she invaded my space, not only had she taken over my private property, but now she was turning it around and accusing me. It was hard to believe. And as if to nail the absurdity of the situation, Karen looked down at the child, speaking in a tone full of mockery. "Sweetie, do you see this? Some grown-ups are really selfish. They don't know how to share." I stood there, drenched in a mix of anger and shock, watching them act as though I was the one destroying things. Never before in my life had I felt such a clear sense of violation, right in my own space. I clenched my fists, feeling like every muscle in my body was tensing to contain the rage that was screaming inside me. Enough. I didn't need to be gentle anymore. "You're acting like a child," I said bluntly, each word coming out as cold as ice. "This is not a park. This is my backyard, and I demand that you and your son leave immediately." Karen, of course, couldn't stand being spoken to so directly. Her face turned into a mix of bright red and purple from anger. With a dramatic jerk, she grabbed the boy's arm, who was still splashing around in my pool, and dragged him out of the water. The boy screamed in protest, kicking water all over the yard, but she didn't care. Then, as if it weren't enough to show how civilized she was, Karen kicked hard at the lounge chair I had carefully set up that morning, knocking it over onto the ground. Not stopping there, she spun around and flipped me the bird. Such a rude gesture that even in my fury, I could only stand frozen, staring at her in shock. "You selfish bastard!" she screamed, her shrill voice echoing across the yard. "You'll regret this!" With that, as if she had already scripted her next move, Karen pulled out her phone, dialed a number at lightning speed, and pressed the phone to her ear. Through the jumble of angry words, I could still piece together the sentence, "I'm going to call Linda, the HOA president. Let's see how long you can keep up your attitude." I stood there, my fists clenched at my sides, watching the scene unfold like a clumsy yet explosive drama. At that moment, I knew for sure. This had gone beyond a simple argument. Karen had started a war that I absolutely would not allow myself to lose. A few minutes after Karen left, I stood there in the yard, trying to gather the shattered pieces of the calm I had worked so hard to maintain. But before I could even fully feel the tension in the air, I saw a black car pull up in front of my gate. A woman stepped out, dignified, carrying a large leather bag, her blonde hair neatly styled, and wearing a formal office outfit. She didn't look like someone here to visit or check in. She looked like an official on a mission. "Hello, I'm Linda, a member of the HOA board," she said in a cold voice, with no warmth whatsoever. "I'm here to address some serious issues." I wasn't particularly surprised, as I had anticipated this situation. It felt like I had just been pulled into a storm I wasn't prepared for. "Serious issues?" I raised an eyebrow, trying to restrain the sarcastic tone in my voice. "Well, please, go ahead and explain." Linda stood up straight, her sharp eyes staring directly at me. "Your pool is not just personal property. This pool should be open for the community to use. It serves the common good of the residents in this area, and I don't understand why you would refuse such a reasonable request." I looked at her, a growing frustration rising within me. "What are you talking about?" My voice was no longer patient. "This is my property, completely private. Not a public area, not HOA property. I've invested in this and no one has the right to demand I open it to anyone." Linda sighed, as if I were doing something foolish. "Don't you understand? this is a major issue. We've received complaints about your pool not being shared. If you don't allow that child to keep swimming, there will be an official complaint from the HOA. It felt like I was standing in an absurd showdown, where they made demands and I was expected to comply. But I wasn't someone who could be easily threatened. You can file all the complaints you want, I replied, my voice now firm. But I will not allow anyone to enter the pool without my approval. And if you or anyone in the HOA deliberately trespasses on my property, I won't hesitate to call the police. Linda flinched, looking at me as if I had just said something completely unreasonable. She pulled out her phone again, as if taking notes on everything I said. Fine, she responded, but I could hear the dissatisfaction in her tone. You've chosen this path. I'll report back to the board, and there will definitely be further actions. As she turned to leave, I could feel the pressure from the HOA waiting to crash down on me. But I wasn't someone who could be easily subdued. I would protect my property, even if it meant fighting to the end. Both Karen and Linda had no intention of leaving. Instead, they stood there as if I was responsible for every inconvenience they had caused. It felt like they were trying to make a persuasive argument with vague, unfounded reasoning, just to suppress my ownership rights. You live in our community, Karen said, emphasizing each word, so you have to share. This is our community, and this pool should be open for all residents to use. Linda nodded, fully agreeing, as if we were all living in a society where individual rights were suffocated by the community interests they had drawn. We're just doing what's best for everyone, Linda continued, her tone sweet but imposing. If this pool is shared, the residents will feel more comfortable. Everyone will thank you for doing the right thing. I gave a dry laugh, unable to believe what I was hearing. Didn't they understand I was facing a clear violation? Did they see my private property rights as unimportant? No, I replied, my voice no longer as soft as before. Your community has no right to demand that I open my property for anyone to use. This is my land. I've put time and money into this pool. It's on private property, not HOA property. You can talk theory all you want, but I won't accept that. Karen looked at me, her eyes filled with anger. You really don't know anything, she said, but I didn't let her words shake me. I was ready for this situation. You're probably going to find a way to make this land a shared property, right? I mocked. No. You and the HOA don't have that right. And if you don't leave right now, I'll call the police. This is private property. You have no rights here. I pointed to the gate to the backyard, with the fence and clear signs indicating private property. You see, it's all very clear. This pool is mine. I have no desire to share it with anyone. This is not a place for arguments, and I demand that you both leave immediately. Linda seemed to become a little confused, looking back and forth between me and Karen, as if unsure how to handle the situation. But Karen showed no sign of backing down. She stood there, her gaze still challenging. We won't let you get away with this, Karen said, her voice cold. This won't end as easily as you think. Then go ahead, I replied, my voice as firm as stone. But don't make me call the police, because then things will go too far. Those words hung heavily in the air, creating a tense atmosphere that could be sliced with a knife. Karen and Linda didn't say another word. The air felt still, with only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, as if warning the three of us that this battle wouldn't be easy to stop. Finally, Karen, despite being seething with anger, had no choice but to pull her son out of the pool. The boy seemed to still not understand what was happening. He even turned back, reaching out to grab the cool water in the pool. But Karen just shook her head, her voice full of frustration. We're leaving, she hissed through gritted teeth, then dragged the boy toward the car, her gaze still full of threat. I watched them leave, feeling like she was walking with her head full of defeat, yet unable to accept the truth. Linda stood beside her, watching the situation awkwardly, as if not knowing what to say next. After a few seconds of silence, she cleared her throat and walked closer to me. "Don't think this will end here," she said, her voice hardening as she tried to regain some dignity. "We will take internal disciplinary action against your behavior." I couldn't help but laugh. "Internal disciplinary action?" I repeated, the laughter failing to mask my contempt. "What are you thinking, Linda? This is my property, not a public area. I don't care about your little power games. Go ahead, but don't expect it to work." Linda said nothing more, just looked at me vaguely before turning and walking away. Finally, they had fallen silent, but not before leaving behind an air of defeat that they couldn't swallow. And I, standing there watching them leave, felt like I had just won a battle with only one result. I had protected my private space. But part of me still felt uneasy. That's why, right after they left, I decided to take one more step. From that day on, I began installing a security camera system around the house, not just to protect my property, but to prevent situations like this from happening again. I knew I couldn't live in constant fear of others thinking they could invade my privacy just because they believed I had to share everything with the community. That feeling, seeing my life invaded, was unbearable. The security cameras weren't just a means of protection. They were a clear reminder to anyone with intentions of violating my property that I would never allow it again. From that day on, whether the HOA or anyone else showed up, I would be ready. I wouldn't let myself be overwhelmed or pushed into an unfair situation, and if they thought they could take my freedom and privacy, they would face undeniable evidence. This battle wasn't over, but at least now I was well prepared to defend myself. I am not someone who participates in meaningless struggles. I simply want to keep what belongs to me. And in this world, ownership is a sacred right that everyone must protect, no matter the challenges they face. This story is not just about me and a few people infringing on my property. It is a warning about what is happening in suburban neighborhoods in America, where HOAs continue to find ways to overstep their bounds and interfere with the personal lives of residents. Some residents who grant themselves power don't always understand that privacy and personal property are inviolable, no matter the reasons. This is why I stand firm and decisively protect my property. No one has the right to force me to share anything I don't want to share, and I did the right thing. When you stand up to protect your rights, it's not just a personal battle. It's an action for all those who might find themselves in similar circumstances. And I believe that no matter who you face or what situation arises, protecting personal property and rights is absolutely the right thing to do. Thank you for following my story. If you find this story helpful and worth sharing, don't forget to like and subscribe to receive more exciting videos. See you in the next video. No more heavy, judgmental glances like before. One morning, while I was tending the lawn in front of my house, Mr. Peterson, who lived 2 houses down and had always avoided me, stopped by. He hesitated for a moment, clutching the handle of his grocery bag tightly, then nodded at me. "Good morning, Noah. Your lawn looks great." Just a simple sentence, but to me, it felt like a small door being opened. In the following days, a few others also started to greet me. There was still some awkwardness, still invisible walls that couldn't be torn down immediately, but at least they were the first steps. And I cherished every small moment like that. Through it all, I learned a lesson I want to share with you. True power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from knowing who you are, believing in your own worth, and not allowing anyone, no matter how hard they try, to make you forget it. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to retaliate with hatred. I just needed to stand firm, with truth, with dignity. And in doing so, I made Brentwood Estates truly my home. Not through forceful domination, but through proud and unwavering presence. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think